Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan. He called her the best man in England. She once said he was the second most important man in my life. The truth is that few partnerships have been as influential as that of then President of the United States and then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Together, both leaders settled the start of a new age in the Western world. Together, they brought the Cold War to an end. This is their story. Margaret Thatcher's first meeting with Ronald Reagan was in 1975, when she was leader of the opposition and he was governor of California. She said that Reagan had warmth, charm, and complete lack of affectation, qualities which never altered in the years of leadership which lay ahead. Above all, I knew that I was talking to someone who instinctively felt and thought as I did. After that, both leaders were elected, Margaret Thatcher in 1979 and Ronald Reagan in 1980. Listen to their first speeches.
Plainclothes police out of a car behind her. And Mrs. Thatcher out onto the doorstep.
On the 4th of May, Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister with a Commons majority of 43 seats. On arriving at Downing Street, she made one of the most memorable, if not universally well-received speeches of her prime ministerial career.
It's the greatest honour that can come to any citizen in a democracy. I know full well the responsibilities that await me as I enter the door of number 10, and I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfil the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me and the things in which I believe. And I would just like to remember some words of St. Francis of Assisi, which I think are really just particularly apt at the moment. Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Most of all, what made Thatcher and Reagan mesh so well was their common anti-communist views and their free market policies, which were fundamental in orchestrating the economic crumble and political dissolution of the Soviet Union. Their policies gave strength to the cause of neoliberalism and shaped the United States and the United Kingdom's economy for future decades to come. And they still continue to affect us today. The BBC documentary The Downing Street Years shows perfectly how close Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were, and dubs it the transatlantic relationship. Here's a segment.
The Reagan's Ranch, high in the mountains above Santa Barbara, California.
Margaret.
We're so sorry that...
Lovely to see you. Wonderful. How are you? I'm fine. How are you?
We're so sorry that...
Margaret Thatcher has always enjoyed a warm friendship with the Republican President Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy.
It was quite tiring last night, wasn't it?
What?
Quite tiring last night.
It was.
Yes, it was.
They share the same right-wing philosophy, a belief in the free market, low taxes, minimum government and a strong defence.
An umbrella is compulsory for visiting America.
Ronald Reagan had first been impressed by Margaret Thatcher when she was a junior minister in Edward Heath's government.
And here?
Lord somebody or the other came over to me there and he said, well, what did you think of our Miss Thatcher? And I told him in no uncertain terms what I did. And the last sentence of my remarks were, I think she'd make a magnificent prime minister. And he said, oh, my dear fellow, a woman prime minister? And I said, well, you had a queen named Victoria who did rather well. And he said, Jove, I'd forgotten all about that.
When in power, the two leaders developed a diplomatic love affair, each one vying to outdo the other's praise.
We share so many of the same goals and a determination to achieve them, which you summed up so well, and alas, I cannot imitate this wonderful American English accent. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Based on the career that I once had before this one, you are a very tough act to follow.
I can remember when most every night at 10 we sang an old refrain.
Above all, the two leaders felt they had a sacred mission to defeat communism and its bastion, the Soviet Union.
Up to that time, the whole doctrine had been one of contain communism. That wasn't enough for Ronald Reagan and me. We thought the free world was by far the best way to live, the free world under a rule of law. And we thought we should make it quite clear to communism that it could and would never win, and that we would go and fight the battle of ideas between what the free world had to offer compared with the dictatorship and tyranny and cruelty of communism.
However, even the best of relationships have their problems. In 1982, the Falkland War produced tensions between the two leaders, with Reagan favoring ceasefire and diplomatic talks with Argentina, while Thatcher mounted an aggressive defense of the islands.
Yes.
That ship was a danger to our boys. That's why that ship was sunk. I know it was right to sink her, and I would do the same again.
In 1983, the United States invaded the former British colony of Grenada to end a coup there. Thatcher said she felt dismayed and let down by the US invasion. Still, that did not stop them from moving on towards the crowning achievement. By increasing military spending, NATO started to modernize its weaponry in order to pressure the Warsaw Pact. Thatcher's and Reagan's rhetoric criticized the Soviet Union and started to agitate the Eastern European populace. Western businesses searched for ways to increasingly invest in the Warsaw Pact, thus spreading capitalism. Then, in 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the Soviet premier. By the end of his leadership, the Soviet Union collapsed, and in no small part due to the efforts of Margaret Thatcher's and Ronald Reagan's administrations. Sadly, all things must end. In 2004, long after retiring, Ronald Reagan died. Thatcher delivered the following heartwarming eulogy.
A great president, a great American, and a great man, and I have lost a dear friend. In his lifetime, Ronald Reagan was such a cheerful and invigorating presence that it was easy to forget what daunting historic tasks he set himself. He sought to mend America's wounded spirit, to restore the strength of the free world, and to free the slaves of communism. These were causes hard to accomplish and heavy with risk, yet they were pursued with almost a lightness of spirit, for Ronald Reagan also embodied another great cause, what Arnold Bennett once called the great cause of cheering us all up. His politics had a freshness and optimism that won converts from every class and every nation, and ultimately from the very heart of the evil empire. And surely, it is hard to deny that Ronald Reagan's life was providential when we look at what he achieved in the 8 years that followed.